It's August, what date it is? 14th, 2024 Park Sport Recreation Meeting. Roll call, Ryan Cambridge. Here. Michael Kaufman. Here. Chris Barksdale.
Here.
Kimberly Lane.
Here.
Chad Diddley is absent. Matt Dillon. Mil Burnhamy, sorry. Here. All right, we have a quorum. Next is the approval of the July 10th, 2024 minutes. Everyone get a chance to review.
Yes.
Do we have any questions or concerns? We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Minutes approved. Public presentation and comments. Anyone available for, anyone online needs to speak? All right. Now we go to staff reports. Superintendent, Jerry Luxon.
Thank you, John. Good evening, Park Board. Highlight a couple of items from the superintendent report. First off, July was Parks and Rec Month, so all month long we celebrated the important work our staff do in the community every day throughout the year with staff outings, a coffee bar, appreciation lunches, and a social media campaign. So just highlighting all the important work they do and the individuals behind that momentum. At the same time, we did begin to say goodbye and so long, see you next time to our seasonal staff. They helped us maintain our parks throughout the summer, helped us conduct our summer camps, and completed internships to benefit our park system. So want to thank those individuals as they joined us seasonally and wish them well on their next endeavors. In the month of July, the maintenance division installed signage at the Holiday Trail and Turkeyfoot Trails. The holiday portion of the trail, which is everything west of the Red Bridge over Eagle Creek, is still closed to the public at this time, but we are making progress on getting that opened up. Maintenance also diagnosed and ordered parts for repair of the splash pad. It is still operational, but there are some features that are down at this time. We look forward to bringing that fully online soon. The Indiana Arts Commission had a statewide gathering in Lebanon, and they chose the Zionsville Road Trailhead as one of their destination stops, as well as the murals in the village. So we were able to show off our mural as well as the art installation in our roundabout at the trailhead, and just talk about the importance of public art throughout our park system. So that was nice to be able to show some of our Zionsville pride there. That is all from the superintendent report at this time. I'll have you note that in your packets you should have also received a secondary email with a fund and appropriation report for your review, as well as a brief article on Nature Play project going on in Illinois. And that's all from me.
Thank you, Jared. All right, next, Director of Recreation Services, Mindy Murdoch. How you doing, Mindy?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing great.
All right. So wrapping up July, we had 1,568 walk-ins to the Zionsville Nature Center, so still a very busy summer. Probably the biggest thing is we finally wrapped up summer camps, so that was a good one. We also had a lot of private programs. We had a couple birthday parties. We went out to Rock at Zionsville United Methodist Church and did a program for their summer camp. We also did a program for the Caring Hands Camp with Boys and Girls Club, and then had a daycare actually come out to Overly Warman with us. So you can see there are all the different ones. The Creek Stomper is still doing lots of park and plays. Unfortunately, the weather has been interesting for summer. We had to cancel a lot of them because of rain, of all things. And then we also had our introduction to pickleball as well. A couple things. We are wrapping up the Active by Nature activity guide for fall that I'm actually was just emailing our graphic designer on some last bits and pieces for it. But we're offering a lot of new things for fall that you'll be able to see here, including we're going to be doing a women's pickleball league this fall, an advanced IMN group for those that have completed their IMN coursework and they're volunteering and they're looking to go a little farther in the program. We're doing a volunteer-led monthly animal encounter that will start this fall. And then I will actually be leading several teacher workshops with DNR. But just at the end of my report was kind of a wrap-up of our summer camps. So in total, we had 18 camps, 360 attendees. Our camp fees, we always work that they cover all of our expenses, from things that we purchase to seasonal payroll that we're actually working at that camp. And our goal is to do a 35% profit after all expenses covered, since camps are our big revenue source for the year, because then we use that to help do a lot of our other programs. And we apparently were very frugal this year, and I'm not sure why, because we didn't skimp out on anything. But we were able to recover all our costs and make roughly about a 63% profit. So that money will definitely go towards all the rest of our programming, as well as into next spring before camps come around again. So we did send out a survey to the parents. I haven't looked at that one yet to see what the thought is, because we are looking at revamping. We do every couple, 2-3 years. We look at our camps and look at how we might revamp them as far as hours, topics that are going on, kind of how they're set up, age ranges, and go from there. So, but unless you have any questions.
Have you thought about any changes to rates or anything?
I don't think so. You know, we were worried with the increase in staffing costs and things, but I think we're still at a very good where we can still make a profit for that one. So I think we'll keep our fees where they are for next year, and then we'll reevaluate.
Wonderful. Any other questions?
Oh, good job on the profit margins.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Great job. All right, next, Parks Attorney, Amy Noonan.
I don't have anything other than the items that you're going to be addressing in your old business.
Very good. All right, moving on to new business. Zionsville Nature Center, Indiana Master Naturalist and Nature Connections Program Review.
Good job with that long title.
That's about the only thing I'm gonna do right.
So for over 20 years, the Zionsville Nature Center has been expanding programming, not only in our nature center, but in our parks, as well as our schools, and our continuing mission to expand that even further into the community. We wanted to highlight 2 new programs that have been piloted in recent years and began to really gain momentum, and to present those, we have Rachel Felling, our naturalist.
All right. Thank you, Jared. There we go. Okay, so thank you guys for giving me a few minutes to talk about a couple programs. I'm going to first talk about our Indiana Master Naturalist programs, which I know many of you are familiar with already, and then we'll talk about the school program, Nature Connections. But for those of you who may not know, Indiana Master Naturalist is a program that is administered through the DNR. They set the curriculum of what is to be taught. Some of it is very specific on topics. Some of it, as a host, we have some play with. So this is something that Mindy and I had talked about trying to get started for a long time, and we started it last year in 2023. So we hosted a program, and that means we brought 30 folks in to learn all about Indiana's natural resources. And the program requires that everyone that goes through it has to do at least 24 hours of coursework. Usually, we broke it down into 8 3-hour sessions, so it took the entire spring season, basically, meeting every other week. And then the folks in the program have to do 24 hours of community service to earn their official certification as an Indiana Master Naturalist. That community service does not have to be specifically through our department, but it can be, but it has to be something related to natural resources. So we started it last year, like I said, and then we had our second cohort this year, and it's been really awesome, 30 folks in each class. And through their coursework, we brought in some guest speakers from outside agencies, like Mark Booth, who does wildlife education with birds of prey. We had Jim Horton, who's the president of the Hoosier Herpetological Society, and a few others. And then our staff taught some of it as well. I taught aquatic ecology. Mindy has taught native plants and some other things. So it was a really, really successful program, and the people in the program have helped us do all sorts of things like weed wrangles, school field trip assistance, animal care in the nature center, native plantings, and more. And then this spring, we did something that was a fun idea to give the people in this program a chance to go visit Carpenter Nature Preserve before it opens to the public, as well as get some volunteer hours and a chance for us to take a moment to try to catalog some of the native and non-native species that are at that piece of property before construction starts. So we hosted what we called a mini bio blitz. So if you're not familiar with what a bio blitz is, it is a time where a whole bunch of people go out to usually a park, some sort of area, and they try to catalog and record as many species as possible in a period of time. So we spent one morning in May, which turned out to be a very hot morning, but it was a good morning. Spent about 3 hours. We had 37 people between master naturalist folks and other local experts that we invited. And in that 3 hours, our volunteers made over 900 different observations, which came down to about over 300 species of plants, animals, fungi, I mean, down to insects, birds, everything you can imagine, in just such a short time. So that was really, really cool. And that information is all online through iNaturalist. If anybody wants to go look at the project, it's viewable. You can pull up little graphs of which species were found and where and how many. And if people had pictures, they were uploaded. We did a little bit of quality control to remove some that were not named correctly, but most of them were good. And so it was a really, really great experience, got everybody out there to see and appreciate the property. And then we're going to do another one in September to try to have we have spring data, and then we'll have fall data, early fall granted, but still fall, before construction starts, since it sounds like it's going to be a little later in the year before that happens. So that'll be another great just data point for us to have. We even identified what we think is a rare and endangered plant that we've flagged, and we've got roped off, and the info was sent to some folks at the DNR so that they can hopefully come out and take a look at it. So the plant people were very excited about it that day. We split into groups of plants and birds and reptiles, and then just, you know, some people that wanted to do a little bit of everything, and we'll do the same thing. So if any of you on the park board want to come out and join us, September 21st, I believe, is the Saturday that we have on the agenda. We can send that invite out to everybody, but we're excited about it. And then another aspect of Indiana Master Naturalist, which we just finished up our second round of, is Junior Indiana Master Naturalist. So this is essentially the same kind of program, but for kids ages 9 to 12. They don't have quite as much coursework, but it's still pretty rigorous coursework that's required of them. We only have 20 kids as opposed to 30, which we do for the adults. And we structure this sort of like a summer camp. So it's 1 week. They're with us from 9 to 3 each day. They do 6 hours of volunteer work during that time. And the last 2 years, we've had it sponsored by the Zionsville Optimist Club, which was really great because it allowed us to have some extra funding to bring in really cool guest speakers, get the kids field guides and other tangibles to take with them and continue learning. So they did a lot. In the photo that you see on that slide, they were removing, it's hard to see the truck behind all of it, but they removed Asian honeysuckle from the Zion Nature Sanctuary. Just those kids right there cut and filled an entire truck in about an hour, hour and a half with our natural resource crew. But then their other big volunteer project, and we had the library to thank for the technology to allow us to do this, is we split into groups, and they worked with laptops, and within their groups, they did their own research and created a Zionsville Parks field guide. So each group took a different, birds or reptiles or things like that and created an online field guide. So what you see on the right side of that slide is what is going to be a sign that I'm actually picking up tomorrow morning that's going to be installed at Overly Warman Park So visitors visiting the park can scan that QR code, and it is going to bring up their field guide that these kids made. And it's really kind of cool to take a look at, so I encourage you to look at it when you get a chance. This was our second year for Junior IMN. We will do it again next year. I'm sure it's a really great learning experience. We got really great feedback from all of the families that participated, and the kids leave with a certification at the end of it. So the future of Master Naturalist within Zionsville Parks, as Jared or Mindy, one of them mentioned, we're piloting our first advanced Indiana Master Naturalist course this fall. So this is for these people that have already been through it and they want to just keep learning. So it's 8 hours of coursework plus 30 hours of volunteer work that they have to do each year to keep that advanced title up. So we've got our speakers lined up and we'll be launching that in September. A couple really cool topics coming up. We're excited about that. Again, we'll continue with Junior IMN. We'll continue with another round of the basic Indiana Master Naturalist in early 2025. I'm sorry, I just realized this says launching 2025. It should be fall 2024 up there. And then I personally joined the State Advisory Council for Indiana Master Naturalists, so I'm honored to be able to help push that program forward statewide, and we're going to be hosting at the library at the Nature Center the annual meeting of the council in just a couple weeks, and we're excited about that. And I'm going to be helping to revamp the curriculum for the Junior IMN program. So that is it for Indiana Master Naturalist. Any questions that I can answer from anybody?
How do the kids sign up in those schools?
So that's not through schools, that's just, we offer it as a public program. So anyone for that program could sign up for it. And a lot of Zionsville residents, but we had some folks from outside of Zionsville who brought their kids to it. This year, we were one of only 3 sites in the state of Indiana to offer a Junior IMN program. So that's pretty special. So we had some folks driving from, all over central Indiana to bring their kids each day, so.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's
That's
great.
very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your leadership.
Yeah,
too.
thank you. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit to a school program. Our Nature Connections program, which I presented to you guys about last year for those of you who were here. Nature Connections is our school year-long environmental education program with 3rd graders that we piloted 2 school years ago, just with Eagle Elementary. And the program is structured with 4 meetings per school year. So we have a couple classroom outreaches, one in the fall, one in the winter, and then in the spring we do a field trip and a service project. So for some schools those are going to be combined, the field trip and service project. For others those will be 2 separate days. And the whole idea of the program is that we want to help kids understand ecosystems overall. So they're learning about adaptations of plants and animals, they're understanding ecosystems, native and invasive species, watersheds, and then how humans are part of these things. So both positively and negatively, and how can they have a positive impact with a service learning project to wrap the whole thing up. So I'm not going to read all these applicable standards, but just so you know, it's based on standards that are being taught in the 3rd grade anyways. We want to supplement what the teachers are already doing to continue to add value to our programs and to help these teachers. So the way that Nature Connections has worked was 22-23, we piloted it with Eagle Elementary. They were the only school. I worked specifically one-on-one with them. This last school year, we added Trailside Elementary. So Eagle and Trailside both went through it. The 2 schools had very different style field trip and service project. Eagle Elementary has the Zion Nature Sanctuary in their backyard, so that's very easy for them, whereas Trailside does not have that same thing. So they came to Overly Warman Park, and it was a more traditional field trip like you would imagine, and we rolled their service project into that, so it was a full day. And then our vision for this coming year is that the plan, not just the vision, is that we will continue with Eagle, Trailside, and then add in Pleasant View Elementary. So with the hope that eventually we will have all 6 schools in Zionsville working with us. So every 3rd grader will go through this program. And this wouldn't be possible without our generous funding partner of the Zionsville Parks Foundation. You can see Parks Foundation founder Nancy Carpenter in that photo planting some milkweed with some kids during the service project. So they helped fund it so that the schools don't have, it wasn't coming out of their budget and it didn't hurt our finances either. So like I said, the hope is to expand this to all elementary schools, maybe as early as not this coming school year that we just started yesterday, but the next school year, 2025-26, when we can take everybody out to Carpenter Nature Preserve. Because the hope would be by spring of 2026, we could get everybody out there, hopefully, fingers crossed, right? And there will be plenty of service project work to be done there. There's a creek for the kids to do their watershed study in. And then we would also be organizing a volunteer naturalist program to help, because we don't have the capacity with our current staff to do this with all 6 schools, but if we can enlist some qualified volunteers and get them trained, we can have them help us and do it that way. And then to just call back to Indiana Master Naturalists, some of those Indiana Master Naturalist folks are ideal candidates for volunteers for this program because they will have the background necessary. So that is what Nature Connections is looking like now and what we hope it looks like in the future. So it's been very well received by the teachers and the administrators of the schools we've worked with thus far. And the kids have had a ton of fun. That picture on the right is one of the 3rd grade teachers at Trailside in the creek at Overly Warman with their students. So it was a lot of fun this year. Any questions about this program?
Great work, and it's great to get these kids educated at let them know at a young age, so great work.
Yeah, thank
Really
you.
appreciate
Yeah.
the effort and the education, so thank you.
Thank you. All right. That's all for
Anyone
me.
else? All right.
Thank you.
All right. Now, Carpenter Nature Preserve Phase 1 agreement.
Well, you heard Rachel, we got to get this park open for the community. So originally, the plan for the Carpenter Nature Preserve and the pursuit of a municipal bond was to simply acquire the land. And with that bond, we would also have funding to develop design and construction documents. So as funding opportunities became available, we would have a shelf-ready project to enact. Well, with the Carpenter Nature Preserve and being such a special project, and it's pretty easy to find stakeholders. So we were awarded 2 grants immediately with that project. One was the Next Level Trails Conservation, Next Level Conservation Trust Grant, which was a one-time opportunity for land acquisition, which last month you reviewed the language with that and authorized John to sign pending negotiations. And this month it is the 2nd grant, which is the Land Water Conservation Fund grant. So we have been the recipients of this grant several times throughout our history as a park system. And fortunately for us, we were awarded a $500,000 matching grant award for Phase 1 of Carpenter Nature Preserve. So within the park board packet, you had the agreement language that has been reviewed by Amy Nooning. So within this grant that we would request that you consider authorizing this evening for park board president to sign, it will provide up to $500,000 in matching funds to establish a parking lot, invasive plant removal, native plantings, a facility restroom, and nature playground for Carpenter Nature Preserve Phase 1. So this was an anticipated award as part of our developing of Phase 1. So with your consideration and authorization for signatures, we will get that grant under agreement and begin processing and moving forward with that. Happy to answer any questions related to the LWCF grant.
I want to move forward on this. So.
Yeah, I'm assuming the match is coming just from the budget that we had already in place. Is that where that?
In next year's budget, yes,
Next
that's
year's budget,
anticipated
okay,
to
great.
authorize.
Well, congrats on the grant. That's great.
Thank you.
So do we have a motion to approve the Carpenter Nature Preserve Phase 1 LWCF agreement?
So moved.
To authorize the park board president to sign?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. All right, Carpenter Nature Preserve drainage improvement.
Thank you, John. I have a slide that I'll pull up in just a second to help illustrate what we're discussing here. So around April, the Parks Department, myself, was contacted by a county surveyor about an issue with the established and existing legal drain that is near Carpenter Nature Preserve. So at some point throughout the history of this site, probably when that pond was formed for the golf course, the legal drain was blocked, and since probably the 80s or 90s, there's been flooding issues that have occurred on one of these adjoining parcels. So whether that was an agricultural field in its past and the farmer simply just farmed around that area, we're not sure, but now there is a new property owner who does wish to build their home on that site. So they contacted the Boone County Drainage Board, and essentially their guidance was to work together to rectify this issue and reestablish that legal drain. So fortunately for us, these neighbors are great partners, and they have proposed to assume the design work and the cost associated with reestablishing this legal drain. And fortunately for us as well, the intrusion into the Carpenter Nature Preserve is extremely minimal. So essentially we will need to daylight their tile into our existing kind of culverty drainage area, which will then carry it as it was originally and intended to do. So as a part of our phase 1 design work, we are reestablishing and removing some vegetation in that culvert. So we will anticipate the additional water that will come through this, but in essence, this is a legal drain, and our actions are either to work with our adjoining property owners and find the solution which has no negative impact on us, no anticipated negative impact, or the county board could step in and do the work for us and then hand us the bill. So one, to establish great relationships with our neighbor who's going to be there for quite a while as we open up our park, and two, just due to the limited footprint as it pertains to Carpenter Nature Preserve, I would recommend allowing the adjoining neighbor to hire a qualified contractor to complete that work, and this park board consider authorizing a temporary construction easement to complete that work. As that work is completed, we will have them also survey it so we can work towards a permanent legal drain easement so that they can maintain that in perpetuity with their parcel. So they have the agreement of all the neighbors in the area, so they will run their pipe, that's the green arrow kind of in the middle of the screen, their tile to the adjoining property, and then they were coordinating with us where that tile would daylight. So we've identified about 100 feet north of where the existing drive is to the maintenance barns. Fortunately for us, we did carve out this area of the preserve from either grant. So both the LWCF and the NLCT are not impacted by this, so we don't even have to entertain those conversations with those granting authorities.
Does anyone have any questions about this?
Are there any issues with who they hire or making sure it's done properly, or?
So the contractor they've selected was recommended from a list, I believe, from the county surveyor. So it's someone in Boone County that completes this type of work.
Okay.
So your consideration tonight would be to allow that contractor to work on our properties, and I'm sure there would be several indemnifications to protect the board at that time.
And allow us to draft and negotiate a temporary construction easement.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's not that hard to build a swale that drains, right?
Exactly.
Is there any other impact with other utilities that are where they're going to build and it crosses our property?
Not anticipated with any of the future or current design,
Okay.
which is why we coordinated where it would daylight.
So do we have a motion to allow new property owners to establish drainage, Carpenter Nature Preserve, and allowing Amy to draft a temporary easement?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you all.
All right, Mulberry Field Sports Agreement, the Zionsville Rugby Club.
Yes, so our Zionsville
We
Rugby
just
Club,
partner with them and
they had a great season this spring, but they also have started a Fall 7 league, and they want to come back home. So the agreement before you would be for reservation of Field 3 on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, August 1st through October 3rd, at a rate of $135 for that term. They have provided documentation for insurance coverages for the park department, but we're waiting on the park board copy as well. The second request from the rugby team would be to allow their storage unit to return to the site as it did earlier this spring as well. So that would be a special use permit to have temporary storage from August 15th until October 3rd. We had no issues with how they handled that this spring. They were great partners, no damage to the asphalt, and they did cone it off, and it was always closed whenever I drove by. So I have no reservations with allowing that to happen again. So 2 items before you would be the sports field use agreement for the term between August 1st and October 3rd, and the special use permit for temporary storage at Mulberry Fields.
Is that, can you explain that fee and how that's arrived at? Because, I mean, just knowing it from the,
it's on it's just the parks fees. It's just what we've approved.
for that, like, 135, that's for the entire,
For less than the 10 weeks or what it is,
Okay.
yes. So currently, per field, we charge $5. We are working towards a more comprehensive cost recovery model
yeah.
because we would like to proactively incorporate the cost of irrigation, the cost of field maintenance, and really step up our level of field care and turf maintenance.
Because I imagine that, I mean, rugby can be pretty tough on the turf, so.
Yes, but they do offer to reseed it like at the
Oh,
end of
okay,
their season.
okay,
So
okay.
we write terms within.
Okay, beyond
Yep.
the 135?
Yes,
Okay,
yep.
okay, okay.
And the rates were always so low because we had no usage for the longest time. So the rugby team has really brought this park back to life, if you will. So
Yeah, yeah.
if it wasn't for them, I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, that's completely true. When I arrived in 2020, there was no sports teams out there, so we simply just wanted to invite them back. But now we're getting so much use that we do need to take a more proactive look and care of those fields because they are getting quite worn.
So do we have a motion to approve the field agreement and then the special use for placing the container on Mulberry Fields?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. All right, special use permit, Indiana Auburn.
Thank you, John. So regularly, we receive requests for programs in our parks. We have one upcoming where the library will be at Heritage Trail Park for a moon gazing event. So but when it is those situations outside of normal park hours, I can authorize that activity. But since the Audubon has requested an owl prowl, and they are accepting fees with that, it is a fundraising mechanism for their nonprofit. So I'm before you this evening to request your consideration to authorize a special use permit for the Indiana Audubon to conduct their owl prowl program at Starkey Park on January 11th, 2025, so at the start of next year. Pending your approval, we will notify ZPD and the Sugarbush HOA so they understand why cars might be showing up after hours and trouncing in the woods.
Anyone have any questions, concerns? Do we have a motion to approve the special permit for Indiana Audubon Society to do the owl prowl at Starkey Nature Preserve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Special use permit, ZPF Donor Appreciation Event.
Thank you, John. So our very own Parks Foundation has planned a donor appreciation event for the Carpenter Nature Preserve. This would be on August 22nd in the evening, 5:30 to 7. It would include inviting a select number of guests, around 50 is the estimate, and there would just be public or private conversations and talks, and then a guided tour throughout the site. So ZPF has requested access to Carpenter Nature Preserve, and I feel like that is completely in kind with what activity should be going on out there right now. So I would recommend supporting this special use permit to grant them that approval. They will have a tent that will be professionally set up by a tent rental company, and the appropriate measures taken with the fire marshals and 811 locates for that. Tent placement will be exactly where it was for the dedication ceremony last October. So park maintenance have maintained the grounds and mowed grass around those areas, and pending your approval, we could coordinate the final details with ZPF.
Should be a great event. Raise some money for, well-needed money for the park. So do we have a motion to approve the special use permit for ZPF Donor Appreciation Event at Carpenter Nature Preserve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Special use permit request, Zionsville Moms Group.
Thank you, John. So this last special use permit is a little bit more subjective, and I invite any conversation or decisions on behalf of the board. So recently we have been collaborating with the Zionsville's Moms Group. So this is a social club in Zionsville that welcomes mothers and their children. So they organize events both for the children as well as just the social connectedness of mothers, whether that's family outings or simply just a mom's night out that they need every once in a while. So this social group does charge $50 annually to be a member of it, and they utilize those funds to create these events for the mothers and the children. So certainly expanding our social ties and connectivity in the community. So they are not a 501c3. We were informed that they have had conversations with the IRS, and it was ultimately determined due to their low membership and not wanting to authorize a board and bylaws and all that, that they would just remain a social club. So usually when there's this type of request, if it is a nonprofit, we can waive fees pretty easily. That's within our policies for shelter reservations and the like. Because of this unique nature, this group has requested a shelter reservation at Mulberry Fields, as well as a program from the Creek Stomper. So while shelters are there and they've already been paid for, and that's a little bit easier to discuss, the Creek Stomper is staffed, and that does take from our availability and budget of our recreation department that we're trying to continue to grow with fee-based programming in balance with free programming. So within the packet were two documents kind of explaining the organization as well as their goals with this summer block party that they host once a year. So their request this evening would be to have the fees associated with a shelter reservation and a creek stomp rental waived so that they could host their summer gathering at Mulberry Fields. I will say that they have recently became strong partners with us in the community, so they have agreed to help support and volunteer and in-kind promote every single event we have coming up in our recreation department and our special events. So they'll be there for the Eras Tour, they'll be there for Smashing Pumpkins and Frozen Fete and beyond. So they're definitely becoming a great partner with a new relationship with the department. So just, that's all the facts I wanted you to consider.
What are the fees that for those two expenses typically?
So the shelter reservation for a residential group is $50, and then the Creek Stomper, since this would probably be a special event, would be $300. So $350 is what would be considered for waiving.
Mindy, would you need extra staff, or would you just do this with what you have?
That would be myself and Megan there for, so roughly 3 hours.
3 hours?
But they're not extra, but it is an opportunity cost, right? Because there's other things you could be doing during that time.
It would be me and Megan coming in on a day we don't normally do. So.
Got it. Do you know, Jared, Zionsville Moms Group? I read the material they submitted, and I don't have any doubt that they are doing good things based on what I've seen or what they've articulated, but they mention in their narrative that the reason that they're not pursuing a 501c3 designation is because it's sort of onerous on the paperwork side and the front end and the reporting side, and we totally get that. But do they have any tax exempt designation with the IRS currently? Because social clubs are recognized under 501c7 as tax-exempt organizations with significantly less paperwork than a 501c3. And as part of that, I guess the reason I would ask, why do we give discounts at all to 501c3s is a key difference between a 501c3 and any other tax-exempt organization is that C3s exist by mission exclusively to serve the public good, whereas others are able to and/or explicitly serve their members. So I think that that's probably why we give those discounts. But I think there's also within, you know, if an organization's a registered nonprofit, whether it's a 501c3 or a 501c7 as a social club, there's accountability in that registration ensuring that they abide by federal law to not discriminate against anyone based on race, religion, or color. Whereas if it's an unregistered social group, then there isn't any, I'm not remotely suggesting that they are discriminating, but if it's an unregistered group, there's nothing sort of tracking or preventing that. And there's no commitment been made on their behalf to do that, short of us seeing their bylaws if they have them. So do you know, are they registered in any other way, or?
I cannot confirm that. We haven't received any documentation related to their status.
I have a slightly different idea that, please, I appreciate all that, so that might invalidate what I'm about to say, but I could also see a scenario where there's just an MOU where there's expected return on, you know, us comping this, that they are gonna do X, Y, and Z. You know, if they do have a social media reach, then we expect X number of posts, and that is then in-kind trade. Because I do think that would be where,
Sure.
like, I think as long as there was some sort of documented expectation, obviously it's not contractual, but like an agreement that's documented that shows that those expectations, because I hear what you're saying, like, they are a good partner, they're bringing people out, you know, we want to be supportive, people engaging, but I have concerns about just, you know, if we waive this, someone else could come
Right.
along.
Well, that to me
Setting precedent.
is sort of like the conversation we had around the maintenance shed, right? That there's benefit received from that arrangement, and that justifies that arrangement. In this case, to me, it's, you know, if we are receiving benefit, then that is a reason
Yeah.
to consider waiving fees, not because they're a social club.
Well, it's the exact demographic or group of people that we want going to the parks and will encourage, so I would totally
There's a
agree.
total positive to it.
Yeah, it's free marketing.
My question is are you being compensated? I mean, are you doing this on your good heart, or is this,
No, she has to legally be paid, I believe.
I mean, it's on our off day, so that's
that's
what we're doing. To me, that's what we're selling your service, Mindy, so.
Right, so I would put it this way, I mean, I know nonprofits normally with shelter reservations, we just waive the fee for it because the shelter's there, you know, anybody
The
could
shelter's not
just
that
show
big.
up and
It's
use
really-
a
I feel like
shelter.
we're not-
Yeah.
it's a straight
I will say,
Stompers.
for the Creek Stomper, because it does involve bringing staff in, and because this is an event, it's not just one staff. We'd have 2 staff on hand, which it'd be myself and Megan there. Even when we last year had a nonprofit rental, and I looked up what we had, we still charged them the cost of the staff. Because that's bringing them in on a day they don't normally work.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
And because this is this Saturday, it's not like I can say, okay, hey, Megan, we're gonna shift your schedule around. Don't work these 3 hours and shift it to Saturday. So it is putting a little bit of a strain on the staff on that one. So, I mean, my thought would be, if you're looking at anything, as far as like discounting or that, I would still say potentially looking at maybe covering the cost of the staffing that's gonna be required to run the Creek Stomper.
And is
Usually,
that baked into the
The 300, was it
350?
yeah, the 300, so it's $150 an hour, 2 hours is the minimum, just because of the setup and everything. And we factor in that, you know, there's usually a half-hour setup, half-hour cleanup. And that's factored into that cost. So the cost of the staff as well as cost of gas, and then just overall wear and tear that comes with the equipment, considering that we will have to occasionally replace equipment. So there's a little bit of a percentage in there for replacement costs. So that's where that 300 came to. So obviously, if you're just considering staffing, it's a little bit less, but there still is a cost
What did you charge
there.
in the past when you said we've done?
When we did, last year, we did for a nonprofit out of Lions Park, we charged 198. I just ran some numbers. If all we did without worrying about any kind of fixing of materials and stuff, if we just went off of Megan's per hour, it'd be 164 for 2 staff. Not considering me, because I'm salary. So you don't want to go off of my rate.
Yeah, and the challenge is then you essentially is the public is subsidizing an event for a social
private
club.
social club,
And then
yes.
we've made a decision, and so like, I think, so that's where I think like there has to be
There has to be
measurable
some
value
reason.
that
Right.
we're getting back.
And I like the idea, MOU. The problem is that their event is Saturday. So it's
Right.
kind of like,
Well, and I think
Yeah.
they're asking two things though, right? I
Mhm.
mean, I think that there's an ask to approve this for this specific event, but they're also, I think, asking for a sort of blanket acknowledgement that they can receive the 501c3 discounts on Parks and Rec services. Like,
Is
that's
that
the
what
way
they're doing, or are they just asking for this
Well,
specific
each
time?
one's, these are all special use, they gotta ask every time, so, I mean, even like you said, the rugby team, that's that, they come from us every year, so.
Right.
But we set a precedent.
I guess
Yes,
that's my,
that-
that's
yeah,
my
they're
worry
it's
again, like
precedent, yeah, so.
I'm happy they're doing what they're doing, but I think we have to have a defensible reason.
You know,
If we're going to take essentially funds away from a department that's already super strapped and underfunded.
I think the waiving of the
Shelter.
fees is, but the Creek Stomper is an asset to the town, and it belongs to the people, and like you said, I think that they
I
need
do
to,
think we
I
need
feel
to-
they need to
So,
pay for the
I
Creek Stomper, 'cause,
I have
let me ask you, so we have, HOAs, they buy it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I
so
was gonna ask.
to me, this is no different than an HOA.
So
Our
the-
HOAs
Do
are
they
Yeah.
pay for it?
no, so the park and plays, yeah, the
So
park
there's
and
that.
plays we set up with the HOAs for this summer, that was just that was our way of marketing ourselves.
Sure.
So those were free, but now if those HOAs would want us to come back outside of that agreement that we've worked with them, then they would be charged the 300. And we've had HOAs pay that for us to be at their block parties and things of that
So what
sort.
if the HOA is a
So.
501c3?
Well, then we would have a discussion and they get a discounted rate, I guess,
This
but.
is sort of like, that's where we
Well,
are.
this is, to me, it's also similar when we were talking about public art, in a way, like, we set a precedent, and then we may not wanna set that precedent, and so what is the policy when a cause I can imagine some really bad case scenarios here. You know, I can imagine a scenario where someone wants to host something that's very controversial, they're a social club, they want access, and they heard that this, Zionsville Moms Group got to do it, and all of a sudden becomes a
You have to-
constitutional issue,
Yeah.
and that to me is where this gets really scary really fast. Not that I imagine it ever happening, but I think it's our job to
Make sure it
imagine
happens.
worst case scenarios to protect this community, to protect the parks, to protect your staff. So I think even with like this MOU idea, like I think we have to be really, there has to be some policy captured and documented, how we make this decision, what criteria we use to evaluate whether or not we're gonna allow for something. And again, I don't wanna be the one always advocating for more bureaucracy, but I do think bureaucracy protects sometimes. And this is an instance where I think it would, and I wanna be really careful.
Amy, can you help us out with that? That's kind of a legal question, right? Like, to me, I find a big difference between if somebody wanted to do a company picnic and roll out here and ask to get a discount, and somebody that is kind of a partner with marketing. So can you tell us a little bit, like, if we let a mom's group in here, is all of a sudden the American Legion want to do some sort of event, can we just say, well, we said yes, that was a one-off, and we say no, or how does that precedent work?
Well, I mean, I think that
Well,
we
that's
have,
true.
we have a differentiation and we have a clear delineation between nonprofits and non-nonprofits. If we make any other differentiation based upon the reason why people are convening, then we start to run into issues with the constitutionality.
We can't just say no, because we've done it before.
Well, if we have precedent, I mean, if we have.
Like, if we
to-
say yes to this, and
Yeah.
somebody else comes in, we just can't say no because we don't like your reason as well as the other.
Correct.
Right, because then we're discriminating against that group.
Yeah.
Based on their content of
Based
what
on
they
our-
want to
yeah.
do and why they want to do it.
And so I guess in the town's view, or excuse me, town's view of tax exempt, do they limit that to 501c3, or is it any tax exempt organization recognized by the IRS?
Our policy is nonprofit organization.
So it's not specifically a charitable nonprofit,
Right.
it could be any
No.
registered nonprofit.
I think we specifically list the different subsections.
Right, and that to me is like, again, it's going back to, if they were a registered nonprofit, tax exempt 501c7 social club, then we could say, well, they're registered with the state, they have bylaws that say they will not
Right.
do these things,
Yeah.
and that's why we agreed to give them a discount. Otherwise, short of that, there has to be, I think, some exchange in value that is commensurate with what we are
Right.
forfeiting
Right.
by giving them a discount. You know, which is fine, as long as that's defensible.
So are we saying social clubs are allowed, but not this one, because they're not done the paperwork? Because if we're saying tax exempt places are qualified, then every social club qualifies.
No,
If-
No.
only if they maintain active registration with the IRS, which means they file bylaws, they file taxes, that they report their incomes. So for example, like even a 501c7 can legally lobby. So if, they can raise money and not pay taxes and then use it to lobby politically as they wish, that, as long as it's in alignment with their mission, which, there's no right or wrong there necessarily. It's just a difference between a 501c3. But to be a 501c7 and maintain that designation with the IRS, you have to abide by your bylaws, which have to state that you will not discriminate membership based on race, religion, or color. Worth noting, gender-based discrimination is still legal federally, as ridiculous as that is, but that is the case. But
Yeah.
but it at least protects you on that end, and that I think goes back to the question of why do we give discount to nonprofits, period? Because to me, it shouldn't be just about whether they make money or not. It's like, what is their purpose? What are they contributing to the community? And I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong at all. I think what they contribute is great, but we don't have any guarantee of that, of their organization or any other organization that's not registered, simply because there's no accountability to ensure that, which puts the onus on us as a board to essentially vouch for them, saying, yeah, we think they're, so then to me, without that sort of legal framework, then it becomes a transaction, which is defensible as a transaction and not a policy.
Yeah, and it sounds like we need to address both at some point. I think it is probably worth addressing sort of, the nonprofit status, what is defined by that, what is included in that, and whether or not we give discounts to those groups.
Well, and I think there's even, if there's a townwide policy that says it's
That's
just,
townwide?
if it's just nonprofit, or is it park specific?
Park specific, to my knowledge.
Okay, well, even if it just says tax exempt as recognized by the IRS, well, then we're just abiding by our policy.
Yeah.
And if they were a 501c7, even as a social club, then that's within our current policy to approve.
I
it
guess
based
what
on
I'm
that
saying
alone.
is it may be worth revisiting that
Oh, I
policy.
see, to
That-
even
as
make
a
it more.
That's one
I see,
issue.
I see,
Because
okay.
to your
Sure,
point,
sure.
like, do we want to start giving
Yes, yes.
discounts to every
All right,
tax exempt?
I think we could probably bring that up at another time,
I
for sure.
agree, so I think like just putting that aside for a second,
Right.
and the immediate issue, because I think what we decide here though sets a precedent for then how we can potentially address that other
It
issue.
could.
So,
Agreed. So I think for us to approve, first of all, I think the shelter rental is inconsequential
Yes.
in my mind.
So I want to do this. I would make a motion to approve the special use permit for the Zionsville Moms Group to have use of the shelter, one-day shelter on September or August, what's the date? Sorry.
It's whatever.
16?
It's this Saturday.
17th?
All right. Do we have it?
I'm not ready to move, I'm not ready to
I'm
vote
not
on that.
ready. Well, unless you're gonna separate them into two.
I'm
separate
separating
That's
them.
why
Well-
even
I'm
in the
separating.
separation, I still think.
Well, I'll say this, that our shelter policy is, if it's not reserved, it's first come, first served. So they would have the same opportunity as anybody else in the community to claim a shelter. That's not,
But they are not having to pay for it.
nobody has to pay if there's no reservation.
Oh,
Reservation is for the exclusive
Reservation
use.
just
It guarantees you have the opportunity, you have it.
Right. Well, we don't incur, yeah, I agree that there's a policy that we still probably should address the.
But I guess my point is like, if that aside, like if we're granting them free use of that shelter, because if that's how we frame this this motion, then it's not about the first come, first serve. We're actually making a statement about what is allowed to
Or
be.
what takes priority.
Yeah, and what can be granted free use, and we're granting free use to a non-tax exempt social club. So then we have set a precedent.
That's why I was making a motion, if we agree, then say yea or nay. And, I said, I want to separate into two separate, to me, it's two
Well,
separate.
but the
there's a cost,
principles
there's a
are
co-
the same.
Yeah, I don't know, to me, the structure's there. It's,
Well, right, but it's not to me about the cost. I mean, I think the cost discussion, it's negligible, non-existent. I mean, you're taking away the we are in the choice to approve it, giving preferential treatment to an organization at the expense of someone else who might want to use that park, or that facility, whether they are trying to reserve it for the same time or happen to want to use it while they're there at the same time. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, but we have to be defensible in why we're choosing to do that, because taxpayer dollars paid for that facility. So we have to be defensible in our decision-making and why we either allow that or we don't.
So and this is for this coming Saturday?
Yes,
Okay,
so,
if we reject it and say no, they could still potentially use it as a first come, first serve.
oh, absolutely, and
Okay.
they could
So-
arrive
and-
early.
And then we're not setting precedent for ourselves. that
Correct.
We're not yet comfortable with, and we need to have some further discussion on.
Unless, I think we go to this idea that we're giving permission for that conditioned upon Parks Department working out an agreeable exchange of value for social media marketing.
Oh, I'm taking that completely. I'm just can they use the shelter or not? If we say no as a
Well, but
parks
there's
board.
two asks.
Yes.
Can they use the shelter? 100%. Anybody can.
Well, yeah, but if we say no,
They still can.
they
use
can
it.
still use it because would be
first come,
first come,
first
first
served.
served.
But I think the point
So-
of the shelter is
To have
because
the
of the
creek.
creek stopper, which is the
Then,
other
yes,
ask, right?
The other ask, and that I'm not ready to.
Yeah, to me, that's a big ask for
Make.
this
I just
town.
think, I also think, you gotta think, I mean, maybe not everyone's as stubborn as me, but if I'm part of a group that is a partner of the community and I get told no for something like that, there's also, it goes both ways, right? Like, they're also saying, okay, well, we're not your partner, right? We're not being good partners to a group whose entire thing is getting kids involved in nature, right? That's the issue I've got when we're saying, like, all these groups, like, if we wanna say, hey, I think that it's an exception because if the groups are revolving around kids and getting kids involved in the park system, I think that's a great thing to do, but when we're saying, no, we can't give you preferential treatment, we're also telling them, we don't wanna be your partner.
But have we seen evidence from them beyond just what they submitted that says that is their mission? Because what I've read in their documents is really that their mission is just to get people together. It
Yeah.
isn't specifically to get people into parks.
And
They've
parks
just been a
user.
good partner because they've used our.
And again, to me, it's the use of town assets
So
is.
is the problem that they
And-
don't have a non-discrimination clause
The-
essentially?
The real problem is that to Michael's point, we are potentially setting a precedent right now for future requests that will be difficult to deny, even if more onerous.
It puts us in potentially very challenging and muddy legal waters.
Well, couldn't somebody else come ask us to use Mulberry Fields, much like the rugby team has asked us? I mean, what
But the
did
rugby
they?
team's
They're
paying the fee.
they're paying the fee.
Right,
so that's what
okay,
they're
so-
they're asking the
But
way
it's a
the
pretty
fees.
low fee, so, I mean,
To be fair, it's a pretty low fee to rent the creek stopper, I think. They have
$3.50.
two staff.
For
Yeah.
$5 a
Yeah,
month
I
though,
mean-
to give
Yeah.
these people it takes a lot of $5 a month to come up with a $400 in fees.
Well, and traditionally, the maintenance of the sports fields were encompassed within the general maintenance of the park, like the fields are gonna get mowed. It's now that we wanna begin to move to a more specialized care that we're going to adjust that fee. And again, as John said, it was more of a welcoming just to get activity out there.
But there was always a contractual exchange of, and I
Yes.
think that's, and I
With,
think we are
with,
being good
with
partners.
insurance coverages with those organizations
Right.
as well.
I'd say too, another thing in addition to the tax exempt status is those organizations are also legal entities recognized by the Indiana Secretary of State. So when we're contracting with them, they're getting insurance, they have an entity that's being insured. If we have a moms group, it's just a bunch of people together. We don't have, one entity that has contracting power or power to, get insurance. So if we do an MOU, I mean, it would be completely not legally binding, except for with the individual that is signing that, and they can't necessarily sign on behalf of a group. So that's kind of a distinction between the organizations, that have tax exempt status and they are.
Yeah, it's not just about like not making money, it's covering
Right.
us on our end too.
And they have an umbrella
But-
organization, they're all members of it. So we're contracting with like the rugby club, which is the umbrella organization and all the people that are members of it.
And I should say too, I feel like there could be, like, do we have something coming up in the near term that we want people to attend? Like,
Throughout the whole year.
well, right, but like,
Yeah.
but I mean, like soon.
But like Halloween,
Like Halloween, like,
the-
could
the
we
carnival.
say that, okay, this is a one-time exception to our policy because, and we're only willing to do it, and by it, we get to define what it is. If you are willing to promote our upcoming Halloween, whatever, or whatever we choose, on your social media once a week until the event starts, or something. But like we exchange something for this particular, what their request, because I understand it's time sensitive, it's that they want to do this Saturday, right? And then we could say, the exchange would be, if they do that, then we will waive a shelter rental and only charge them staff time for the Creek Stomper. So then we're absorbing the cost of maintenance, fuel, and all that. And so that's like meeting in the middle. But there has to be a defensible exchange. And that if they want to come, like with our current policy, which we could change in the future, but under our current policy, if they file for 501c7 designation, which is a single filing, it's significantly less onerous than a 501c3, which we have for Overly Warren Park, then they would meet, at least by definition, the current policy of in our fee structure. So that would give them the opportunity to do that if they wanted, and would at least give us the assurances we need, if we're granting discounts or whatever to tax exempt organizations, not just social groups. But it doesn't, I'm trying to get us to something that doesn't set a precedent necessarily and helps them do what they want to do on Saturday. Because I have no doubt that what they want to do is great. The more our staff are out there is great. But, that we are, assuming some liability here and doing what we're doing.
And footing the bill.
Right.
Right, even at an opportunity cost standpoint, but
Are the staff even available to go out this Saturday? Is it even a negotiation, like, can it even happen?
We could make that work.
We could make that happen? Okay. Tentatively, okay. Yes.
Jared, do you have an opinion on if they've been a good partner or not?
Yeah, I believe they have already assisted with events this year, and they are manning a station at the upcoming Eras Tour bike ride. And their commitments for Frozen Fed are already, I think, etched in stone for the most part, as far as agreeing to providing some service at that. So they have certainly kind of popped on our radar this year and been engaged with the Parks Department since.
And I think that should be part of the decision. I think it's acknowledgement that they have been good partners, so we were willing to enter into an agreeable exchange of value, or whatever the proper term is. Because I think there's another scenario where someone could say, well, you didn't even give us a chance, right? Like, it's
right,
like,
I
well,
guess
there's
that's a good point.
established-
They've proved
Let's
They've
prove
already
an
done it.
established partnership.
good faith so far.
But I still think there needs to be some sort of capture transaction, just purely from the standpoint of it will give us good protection for future, future, in the event that someone else, God forbid, that would be problematic. And I think so I think we get to have our cake and eat it too, as far as, like, is what I'm saying. It's like, I think we get to satisfy, like, we are coming as good partners, but we have to acknowledge that there is a staff cost, and I think that's an understandable thing to communicate back to
Oh, for
them.
sure.
And, I think that's the way, that would have to be how I would approach it.
So
I
is
don't know
the,
what the motion
is
is.
the,
Yeah.
Is
Hold on,
the-
let's see. Are you gonna do it?
No.
Well, I'll try, okay.
John's just like.
I move
John's
that
trying
we allow the use, or bring in the use of the Creek Stomper for this moms group with covering the cost of our staff? Allow
And
for
a
this, for
memo of
this
understanding.
Okay.
Well, I think we have, hold on, I think we have to add to that, and this was his point, the reason we are willing to do that
Yeah.
is because of the value or the benefit that we have already received from their organization
Yeah.
from partnerships to date.
Yeah, we'll
Because
credit,
that's the defining factor.
we'll credit that towards cost.
Well, not even,
That's
just,
right.
just the decision to even
Entertain.
To
entertain it, because
Yeah.
technically it's out of our policy currently. So we have to have a reason of why we're doing it. The reason we're doing it is because
Good faith partnership.
they have demonstrated thus far a good faith partnership and added value towards our mission and vision as a park board. And so we're willing to do that because of that. And if there's a second ask that, you know, that we would like them to promote, you know, the Halloween events until they're, you know, on their social, which, whatever. you
Yeah.
know,
It
like-
they
sounds
seem to
like
be
they
already-
have some things that they're already saying they'll do for us.
Right, and so if we just, so if you know what those are, we could capture those.
Send them an email or something.
So
Yeah.
utilizing the special use permit, we could adjust the terms to include all of those items as well as the cost recovery for staff time?
Yes.
Or would you want to enter into an
Well,
MOU?
see, the special use permit, that contemplates like indemnification,
Hmm?
right?
Yes,
So whenever we have, though, a non-entity that is signing this.
it would be the individual
it
taking
would
on
be
that.
the individual taking on that. The individual that's signing this agreement would be the one that's taking that on, because they don't have, you know, an entity. So if they're willing to do that personally, then, yeah, that's fine. I also think that, you know, putting this in a policy and defining, you know, I mean, not to get overly burdensome with this, but defining like what a good partner is, you know, that we are going to consider this going forward for anybody that's considered a good partner and has added value. As long as you have a policy and you consistently follow it,
Yeah.
we'll be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But right now, we're kind of in uncharted waters, because all we have
Developing
is
yeah.
nonprofit, which they're not.
I can take a stab at this motion.
I am not making this motion.
Should I?
And do you need to stretch first?
I do. Well, so I move that based upon past precedent and willingness to enter into agreement to provide value through social media channels and other promotional means, we are permitting the Zionsville Moms Group to, we're waiving the fee for the shelter for the Zionsville Moms Group. And I can't remember where we landed on this last part, and waiving outside of staff costs.
Reducing, as you say, reducing the fee of the Creek Stomper to cover necessary staff costs.
And giving permission, I think the last piece we can say, and giving permission to park staff to figure out what that agreeable fee and coverage is. You know, because if there's other ways that they can bring value, then that can adjust that final fee. That would be my motion. Did that capture that all right?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Good discussion.
Way to jump on
I
that,
need a
Dave.
nap after that. Exhausted.
All right,
It seems trivial, but it is important.
it's important to
Right.
discuss.
Because
appreciate
we don't
that.
want to be in a position where we're accused of discriminating against someone in the future,
Yeah,
which we would not want to do, but that could be an
You
accusation.
gotta protect everyone involved. All right, old business, Big Four temporary construction easement.
So as you recall, earlier this year, we had a request for a connection to our Big Four rail trail that was not constructed or considered by the Parks Department or the Park Board. So this resident came to us and asked for the criteria they would need to have a connection from their property to the Big Four rail trail. So that resident has provided the requested stamped drawings for his pedestrian bridge crossing that would traverse from his property to the Big Four rail trail. The park board set terms concerning this would be a public amenity. You know, should the public want to walk into a chain link fence, they would have that right to do so. This individual has shown and met all of those criteria along the way. So the remaining step would be the authorization for them to actually construct and maintain that structure in perpetuity. So Amy has worked on a temporary construction easement and a maintenance agreement that would coincide with that. So for your consideration would be the approval of that structure, knowing that its design, installation, and continuous repair would be associated with that property. And they have agreed to indemnify the Park Board and Parks Department for any negligence that might come along with that construction. Amy, anything I'm leaving out?
We're assuming the liability for anything that happens on the structure by the public.
No.
Oh, really? They're assuming that liability?
Well, we're assuming the liability if, only to the extent that the injury is not caused in any way by their work, maintenance, design,
Right,
activity.
like fault of the construction, right.
Right, fault of the construction or failure to maintain.
If someone falls off the bridge and gets hurt,
That's on
that's on
us.
us.
That's a, yeah.
As it would be in,
Any other bridge, yeah,
Right.
just be.
Right, so it's no more liability, no less.
I think we have, again, this is something that seems simple, but it has significant implications and public safety considerations. I think they have been amenable in the requests that we've asked of them, despite maybe sort of a lack of understanding of the process. It's been a learning process, and they have demonstrated a responsiveness. I think that the changes that we requested based, in the last set of submissions seem to be addressed in the current set, which are signed and sealed by a registered engineer in the state of Indiana. I guess I would make a motion to approve the temporary construction permit, or what is it? Easement. Provided, I guess, that, and I guess maybe this is a question, in a park project, would you typically do an inspection, like an as-built inspection?
We put
Yes.
that in here, yeah.
Okay, that is, provided that an as-built inspection is completed, ensuring that it's built as designed.
And I would also add, maybe if I could, subject to the successful negotiation of some of these terms, because while they've been
Exactly.
really
Subject-
amenable to,
Everything I
Almost
just said,
everything we saw.
subject to
Yeah.
the terms that are set forth by the park board attorney and the park director.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right. Carpenter Nature Preserve Design Update.
So if you will notice within the packet, there was not a construction set for the Carpenter Nature Preserve Phase 1. We have decided to continue working on that, incorporating some of the suggestions from the board last month. So those documents will be ready for you at the next park board meeting. And upon your review and approval, we will put those out to bid and begin that process. So just wanted to kind of give an update on why that wasn't within tonight's packet. I do have a request of the board, and that is if any members, I'm hoping at least 2, not more than 4, would want to join on a branding committee so that we can identify a logo for the Carpenter Nature Preserve. The goal of this would be for it to have its distinct logo that could be applied to White Oaks Common or the Nature Center, but still complement our existing brand. So I'm inviting some other residents in the community, but would welcome 2 to 3 park board members to join on that.
Time commitment, number of meetings.
So we would have no more than 3 meetings, probably just 2. So we'll have an initial round, which is kind of the exploratory, a second one that'll refine those concepts, and then the third one will be when we present to the park board. So just 2 Zoom calls.
I'm happy. Oh.
Yeah, no, I was gonna ask a question. Who's doing the actual branding, the
Yeah,
graphic production?
that's included within the design services. So
okay.
runs Dell Ernstberger.
Okay. I mean, I'd be happy to sit in too, so, but I don't wanna take the spot away from someone else who wants it.
I would do it too, but
I am not creative, so I will not be joining.
Chris, you wanna be on it? If you don't, or if you do, I'm happy to step off.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm overextended.
All right, we
Well,
have
I
our
am
3.
too, but I still want to do
I want to do it, but I'm overextended, so it's just all good.
But he has more self-control within his
Evidently,
personal
yes.
time.
I have learned to say
actually,
no.
I'll contingent upon schedule, so if you have 3 and if the schedule doesn't fit with my complexities, which I have quite a few
Okay.
schedule-wise, but I have availability, just,
If we have 3, then at
Yeah.
least someone can be
Yeah, yeah,
there.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll definitely have representative of the park board.
Perfect. We'll extend those invitations shortly, or begin to coordinate the cat's out of the bag scheduling. That's all for Carpenter right now.
Okay. Overly Warman Park, we need to make a motion to authorize Amy Noonan's law firm to go in the necessary steps to terminate, contact the contractor and bond a surety to terminate contract for Overly Warman Park.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Other board-related items?
I just want to make an observation, something that is sort of encouragement to you all. Like, I was thinking, the last meeting we were talking about, you made a comment how Zionsville Park's sort of identity and brand is sort of this nature and very naturalist, or I forget exactly how you said it. And just hearing the presentations tonight about the school groups and the growing of that program and the naturalist program and Carpenter, I just think that there really is a very unique and really rich brand that this parks system has, and I would love to continue to, you know, explore ways, or I hope we continue to explore ways to really further own that and celebrate that, because I do think it's a significant differentiator, and I think you guys have done a great job in a way that the parks are not just a recreational opportunity, but an educational opportunity that I think a lot of park systems only scratch the surface at. So congrats to you and your team, and great work, and I'm excited to see how that continues. And I think Carpenter is sort of like the perfect, you talk about a destination park for this community, that's the right destination park. And so I still agree with some of the points that, like, yeah, we need a variety of different amenities, but I think that as a unifying theme is really exciting. So,
Thank you, Michael.
Very well said. Anyone else?
The last plug I'll make, since I'm on the steering committee as reviewed for the comp plan, a way that we can help ensure for future generations that Zionsville remains that way is through the comp plan. So that is why I think as this board it is important that we're all aware and engaged and advocates for the parks and open space components and requirements of that, especially as they relate to private development.
when is the best point to engage in that process?
There are a series of community meetings going on right now, I believe. I don't have the dates in front of me, but they're published, and that would be the best way to start. I don't think it's the only opportunity, but it's a formative part of the process.
Do boards or other people ever have the opportunity to sort of officially chime in from the perspective, or is that not kind of how that comp process works?
That I don't know. I think I don't know the answer to that.
I know they did a bunch of, I've got groups from different stakeholders, if
Like
you will.
focus groups, yeah.
Yeah, focus groups.
Well, they have a pretty large steering committee
Yeah.
that has representatives from multiple departments,
Okay.
and like we're on it from the park board. So I suspect that might be the most in-depth way, but the community is encouraged right now to get involved. I mean,
Okay.
there's active community outreach to anyone and everyone who wants to. And I think how we set standards around how our town grows and what that looks like and what is integral to our quality of life and what is open space even, and how we talk about those things is really important.
Yep.
So.
Focuses on us. Totally agree. All right. Claims, everyone get a chance to review claims as presented. Do you have any questions or concerns with the claims? Do you have a motion to approve claims as presented?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Claims are approved. Do we have a
Make a
motion to
motion to
adjourn?
adjourn.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Meeting's adjourned.
Good work, everybody.
Signing anything tonight?